Welcome to the anesthesia machine check. In this vignette we will review an overall basic setup of things that will secure you in case of failure. We will look at how the machine really becomes an extension of you, so that it's important to know it inside and out. We'll go over briefly the FDA checklist, look at the high pressure, intermediate, and low pressure systems, and then look at things to troubleshoot with the machine. So when you initially approach the anesthesia machine, when you come in the morning, you usually find it in a state like this. There's nothing connected, it's not turned on, so that's where you have to start. The first thing is the on-off button here. On the newer electronical machines, what will happen is that they go through a self-test when they turn on, so you'll see that come up in this screen. The other thing that you can be doing meantime while waiting for that check to complete is attaching your circuit. And the circuit usually comes in a bag such as this that contains the bag, the circuit itself, and the Y connector. And also you'll need a mask. So in order to connect your circuit, you have two unidirectional valves here, one for inspiration, one for expiration, which you attach both sides of the circuit to, and also attaching the AMBU bag. So the other thing that you are going to want to check is that you have two things that are always necessary to keep you out of trouble in case of equipment failure. One being the presence of an AMBU bag, which is appropriately sized. So if you're doing pediatric cases, you would have a pediatric AMBU available. If you were doing neonatal cases, you have a neonatal AMBU as well. The presence and functioning of suction. Just to see that suction is present doesn't necessarily mean that it's working. So you always want to check to make sure that it is working. That is in case you need to provide positive pressure ventilation to your patient, or if they happen to regurgitate and you need to clear the contents of their mouth. So when you first turn this on, you'll see I've got some red indicators, and this indicates that I have no O2 pressure. That's because my pipeline supply is disconnected. So you would also need to make sure that you have oxygen flowing through your pipeline supply. You can do that in several different ways, which we'll talk about in class. But you'll hear the oxygen initiate when you engage the nipple of the pressure supply line. So the first thing we want to do is we want to proceed through the checklist. You'll see here, again, on the electrical machines, it'll take you through an electronic checklist. This is your scroll and select button. So we're just going to go and scroll to machine check and select. It gives us our first menu. In order to start this machine check, we need to set the bag vent switch to vent, which this is the bag vent switch, to vent. Open the patient Y, which it is, and then hit select. So as you'll notice that this has 22 seconds, but obviously it's not going to take 22 seconds. So this first check is fairly quick. When the machine has actually performed all the checks within the checklist, you will get a confirmation of completion by an audible alarm. And there are several different alarms that the machine will go through, and again, we'll talk about that in class. That's the audible alarm telling you that the checklist has been completed. So the second phase of this is that we want to continue, as it says here. So it tells us now to make sure that the bellows are fully collapsed, which they are, that we want to occlude the patient Y and then select continue. We can occlude the patient Y by two mechanisms, either by holding our thumb over the Y piece, which now obligates us to stand here and keep our finger over the aperture, or we can use the obturator that's provided by the machine. The reason why we don't use this particular Y piece with that is because the end-tidal CO2 sampling line, if it's open, that will obviously create a leak in the system, and the machine will read that as a negative. It's a false negative. So then we would continue. So now, as you notice, you've got 2 minutes and 13 seconds about. So this gives you time to accomplish the other tasks that you need to in order to start your day, whether it is assembling your airway equipment, making your IVs, reconstituting your drugs, setting up your cart, doing other things within the close proximity of the machine while you wait for the machine to self-test.